Welcome to Unearthed Sonia Poetry. So glad to see you all here. And we're going to get going in just a couple of minutes. But feel free to keep ordering and doing what you need to do. I also want to check to see if either Peter Law or Jasmine Reed are here, because you're on my list of people who have already bought tickets, but you didn't identify yourself. Yes, Peter's going to be coming. Peter's going to be coming. Are you Jasmine? Awesome. Good. All right. And I think everybody knows this already, but we do have a $5 cover so that we can pay our artists. So please contribute if you haven't. Hello, welcome. Come in. So we're going to start now with our featured poet, Nadia Colburn. I'm really excited to welcome here to Unearthed. Nadia and I have known each other for a very long time, and this is the very first reading from her book, The High Shelf, which is a manuscript. I saw drafts of this like a decade ago, and I know how exciting it is to have a new book out, especially one that has been as well crafted and long in coming as this one. So we're really, really thrilled to have her here to read and to celebrate that work. So Nadia does have copies of this for sale, so please approach her after the reading and she will sell them to you in any way possible. So, featured poet Nadia Colburn is the author of The High Shelf, published by WordWorks in the fall of 2019. Her poetry and essays have appeared widely in such places as The New Yorker, American Poetry Review, The Kenyon Review, Conjunctions, Spirituality and Health, and more than 70 other places. She holds a PhD in English from Columbia, a BA from Harvard, and is a serious student of Thich Nhat Hanh and Kundalini Yoga instructor. She's also the founder of Align Your Story Writing School and Coaching for Women, and offers online classes, in-person classes, workshops, and retreats throughout New England. And many of her students are here. I am one of her students, in fact. I did her online writing workshop this summer. It was fantastic. So not only can you get a book from her, you can find out about her teaching. But in any case, we're very pleased to have her here. Please welcome Nadia.
Thank you, Anna. I think that when I just remember Simone here, who's now 15 and a freshman in high school, was a little baby, so little that I could take her to evening workshops with Anna and some other friends who are poets, and I was writing some of these poems at the time, so that's a very long time ago. So it's very special to, this is my, as Anna said, my first reading from the actual book. I was really immersed in poetry. I mean, I'm still immersed in poetry, but I was really immersed in writing these poems for a while and putting this manuscript together. And then I put it aside for a while, and last year I sent it out one more time and it got accepted. So here it is. Life Works in Mysterious Ways. I'm just going to start with the first poem of the manuscript and then kind of walk you through it a little bit. Into time. Any moment, the red door. Then the leaves, the many leaves, all yellow now. They are so thin, I think I can feel them ready to fall. One breeze, and you there walking or standing alone. What do we not become? So this is a book about becoming and what it means to come into the world, to be in the world, to find a home in the world, to change. And the next long poem is called Plenitude Pregnancy. I'm not going to read the whole poem to you. There are 9 parts, but I'll read a few sections. I wrote this poem before those workshops because I was pregnant with Simone, and we spent the first part of the summer in Greece, and then Simone was born at the end of the summer. So these poems take place in Greece. As the golden cup of emptiness, inside little legs kicking up against my side, your little rump now by my navel. The stones of the hillside have been gathered into walls, stripes along the hillside's middle, towards which the sheep, their legs hobbled close together, walk, eager for shade. The world into which you will come is a waiting bowl. Hear the high echo. Across the terraced hills, more terraces. The olives the only green, and the spindly broom with its bright yellow blossoms, the land made to support them, the donkeys at evening carrying water, and below the aquamarine of the sea, now smooth as glass, that brings back, open-mouthed, black plastic bags. Oh, little one, all this that is not mine to give you, what will I give you? Their leaves, a thick, dark, unguent green, their fruit, too dry to eat. The fig trees brush all night, one against the other, in the breeze. Sound like the sound of rain in our own country. When you are born, may I recognize the unseen in my arms. So one of the things that makes Greece so beautiful is, in fact, that the land and the water has largely been destroyed. So that aquamarine that is so lovely to swim in is so clear and limpid because there's basically not much life left in it. The Greek poets talk about the wine-dark sea, and it was very different in the classical period because it was full of life. And these hills that are really stony and just have these little tiny olive trees were forests, and there were wild lions there. So things change. And that's one of the things that I was, the book is asking, you know, how do we keep up with the changes? And there's a lot of beauty and wonder in the world, and also a lot of destruction. A lot. So, reading the newspaper by the open window. The world that is alone in its beauty, with no consolation. The black walnut trees, the double oleander, the goats, always hungry. Who hasn't been seduced? Who is the wonderful me of happiness, of forgetfulness, of horror that must be apart? As if all were a word in another language. Now no one speaks. So becoming a mother really made me turn to poetry more. I was studying poetry in a PhD program when I was pregnant with my first child, Simone's brother, Gabriel, who's now off at college. But almost as soon as I got pregnant, it was like, oh, wait a minute, there's some other voice I need to listen to. And I wanted to listen to that interior voice and write my own poems. So I ended up in Cambridge when Gabriel was 1. I came to Cambridge to work with the poet Jory Graham, and then we stayed here. And I had been writing kind of long, more intricate poems before I came up here. And I think that in those workshops, I was given permission to listen more. And in the process of listening, I took more and more words out of my poems. So these poems are very spare. And I feel like I was trying to go beneath the surface and see what was there. Like what were the shapes of things, and what was my body telling me, and how do we hold both the beauty and wonder of the world that I was bringing new life into with the real difficulties and traumas and destruction of the world. The natural world. It was like waking up one day, no longer able to carry a tune. The little chicks trailing behind their mother, searching for food. The hummingbird coming once, twice to the bougainvillea vine. The children in the water laughing, feeling the sun on their faces, their arms. the waves showing their white tips, claiming a space, becoming undone. 3 starfish lie on a blanket. Music from a boat that heads to the pleasure island charges the air and is changed. The beat louder, austere, words lost to the wind. Yes, certainly, we will destroy ourselves. Because that urge to, when you see these beautiful starfish on the beach, you think, oh, that's so cool. I'm just gonna take it and put it on my beach towel. And then, that's cool, I'll just take these starfish home with me. It's very small, right? But it's also kind of profound. We think that we've lost our relationship to the living beings of the world. And so I was kind of trying to turn that over in my mind, writing these poems. I have a long, relatively long poem called Given that's just a list of extinct birds whose songs we'll never hear again. But those were a lot of external challenges, like disasters, that I was grappling with. In the process of writing the poems, one of the things about poetry is that we're looking at the external world, but it's always in relationship to the internal world. And the landscape in a poem is both an external landscape and an internal landscape. And in listening to more deeply, I was also aware of the way in which I was writing a kind of inner landscape poem as well. What was the inner pain that I didn't quite have language for, that I was trying to translate into these poems? So this poem is called The Feeling of Trying to Express the Feeling I Can't Even Name. We assembled it. We made the corners tight, a box that might hold all of us, safe from everything we wanted to escape, and creating the idea of escape itself. So in the middle of this book, there are a number of poems about boxes, which explore the idea of limitation, entrapment, escape, safety. What does it mean to be safe? How do we create safety? What's our relationship to making art? Namelessness. In the box, I put the body. There were no words for what had happened. Outside, all the other boxes. In some, no movement at all. In some, dancing. The color like a deep blue lake reflecting the color of sky. Who could say which was original, which the interior, which the exterior? Or like the color of the sky at dusk opposite the setting sun. All silver, and the lake beneath all silver, as if something were about to happen, or had only just occurred. And this poem is after the artist Joseph Cornell, whose amazing boxes, if you don't know them, go look them up, they're wonderful. And they really inspired a lot of the poems that I was writing. He was a New York artist and assembled his kind of collages with lots of boxes. And he lived at home his whole life, and his brother had cerebral palsy, so he was wheelchair bound. And I always think of Cornell's work as exploring freedom and restriction, and that kind of brother who was at home in the wheelchair that he was so close to. The physical world. There was the opposite house, not lit by the sun, and the trees all dead-like, cut by the frame. And we were lying there trying to keep ourselves, trying to keep the other, and the other trying to keep the other that was just the same with some little variation, and the brown shingle and the brown shingle next to it. The world inlatched, of itself made, and the boxes, the little boxes, each one just the same with some little modulation, and in the boxes, little partitions, and in the partitions, littler partitions, and there, in one, a bird. So I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit. Eventually, these poems, it wasn't really until after I finished this book, to be honest, that I realized that I was also writing out of my own trauma. I knew that there was some kind of pain that I was writing from that I didn't have language for. And one of the things that I think is so powerful about poetry is it gives language to what we don't have language for. We can really explore that space between the verbal and the nonverbal. And so it's kind of nice, actually, that the book is out now all these years later when I have a lot more distance from these poems and from the kind of struggle that I was working within. But there is some kind of resolution at the end. Second season. In time, fear wasn't necessary. I thought of other things. Crocuses we found beneath the melting snow, piles of twigs behind the neighbor's fence given to bloom, bright gold in a shadowless spot. Me again. And there was this dislocation, still trying to keep up, not to be jumped beyond. Mind kept saying, oh, my little numberless and forced to fit into just one, kept saying, among the one and the many is what all, while still the sun on the snow, like the thought of death, that when it comes, comes naturally, that we all must bring ourselves with ourselves completely. Now, not the box, not the high shelf, but the breath, leaving, coming back. I lived in the suspension caught by what I did not know. Now summer comes again the heat of the sun, again the children's voices rising from the sprinklers in the park. Everything I wanted to say is taken up in their voices and dissipates. A squirrel comes down the fence and rubbages in the basil, eats one leaf, then another, and runs up the tree where it has its nest, high in the branches, neither caught nor unsupported. And tomorrow that the squirrel knows how to gather for, gathering not too much nor too little. Tomorrow that the squirrel does not even try to name. And what can't be held. Gone endlessly, and I toward the future like a sailboat to wind, like wind to the far no shore where everything turns, like and like and like, to the unlike, as before me, what sings. So this little book that kind of creates its own little world and now has its own little life here. It's very kind of cool. And I also have a few new poems that I thought I'd read. So how am I doing for time? Is that okay? So yeah, I think my big question is, how do we hold everything, right? How do we hold the suffering and the joy, what we understand, what we don't understand, this such a precarious moment that we're living in, and what's the role? I think the role of poetry in part is to help us see the connection between the external world and the internal world, which sometimes we think they're separate, and they're always in relationship, in dialogue. And the destruction that we're doing in the external world around us, I think, is a sign of the destruction that we have really in our souls, that we can't see the connection that we have to this world that's our home. So these poems are very much about homemaking and coming to find, I think part of I actually had this thought this morning, as I was thinking about this book and the pregnancy and how that's so important. You know, it's like the body creates a first home for another life. And to some extent, I needed to learn, like, how can I keep my children safe in this world? But also then how can I come to feel safe in my own body with my own experiences? And I think that that is a continual process, but it's also, as I found, the safer I feel within myself, the more connected I feel to myself, the more I have to share with the world, the more I feel energized to take action and to try to bring that sense of love and safety outward. So these are some much newer poems that I'm going to read. I'll just read a few. March. All winter we walked on the fallen sky, walked on clouds until we fell, thigh deep, to earth. Now the clouds are running down the side of the mountain in small, hidden rivers. What is it in you that needs melting? What do you do with your anger and your hope? All night, down the side of the mountain, waters run together where we cannot see. Underneath, the earth is awakening. Once more, the tips of bare branches put out new buds that clasp their small hands together in prayer. And I'll read just two more. Poetry. It was such an ordinary day. I had to pay attention so that no car door opened on me, so that no one turned into my lane as I was biking. And suddenly, the sky, as if it were an invitation or a mouth singing deep-throated praise to all beings, or my own desire satisfied. The sky, I tell you, as I turned the corner, suddenly opened, and the light from between the clouds, like long arms with thin hands and long fingers, beckoned. I biked on. The orange light kept streaming between the gray clouds. I got to my destination. I parked my bike. But I had this place to put my thanks, today, on this page, now. You who are so quiet. Didn't you know there was a great symphony in your heart? Didn't you know that you were composing? The trumpets are so glad, and the French horn, in its great deep beckoning, resounds. You who are so quiet, didn't you hear the calling from your stillness, as if you had looked out over still water to see the geese rise up in unison in front of the setting sun? Such a squall of color, and your whole being given over to the one name, to the one who rests in the great upflapping, the geese mounting higher and higher into the evening, growing brighter and louder still. Thank you.